Alright. You thought we were done? Not even close.
All right.
We're diving deep into deep conversations here with Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. I'm your host, Sean Kneese, and joining me is my co host, Harrison Storms.
Hey.
And today our guest is Spike, and they are an actor and singer. And I met them doing improv. And not too long ago, we got into a deep conversation because I have this thing with my OCD, this like magical thinking, where so I thought I was taking the train home, and there's the hourly train, and then I wanted to catch the 11:11, and I didn't catch the 11:11, so I was thinking, oh, in my mind, I needed to catch the 11:11 to go on this good path and to have a good outcome with like in my life and all this with different things, and then I said, now I didn't take the 11:11 train, so now I'm on the wrong path, and then I'm like, what could have happened if I went on that train? And you said you'll never know. You said the only reality we're in now is the one where you didn't take that train, and all that matters right now is this moment, and that should be what's giving your full attention. This conversation we're having right now. In the past, that alternate timeline where you went on that train doesn't exist. It's all that's real is the now. And you said that a lot of that living in the present, it didn't come through because that's similar to a lot of the ideas in Buddhism and spirituality is just being one with the present moment. But you said it came more from acting and your acting teacher. But it's interesting that you came to kind of a Buddhist mindset through that, not spirituality. So I wanted to get into that, and you also said a bit about your story, which was interesting as well. But we'll just start with that, and I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, definitely. I see a lot of parallels too between what a lot of people say about spirituality and some of the things that I've kind of really clung on to that a lot of my acting teachers have taught me in the past. The whole thing with acting is you're living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. And one of the most powerful things that one of my acting teachers looked at me and told me one day was, be here now. And that really resonated with me because, again, if you look at it, the past, there's nothing we can do to change it. That's something that already happened, is set in stone. And so the only thing that really ruminating on that and focusing on it is going to do is lead to a life where you're not fully satisfied because you're constantly looking back and you're completely missing what's here now, right in front of us, and what we're experiencing now and where we can go from this moment on. And then on the flip side of that, also, even looking into the future, that doesn't exist yet. At any moment, anything can change, whether it's you or a family member falls ill or gets injured, whether it's winning the lottery, losing a job, getting a job. That can completely change the trajectory of your life and completely change your outlook on life. And there's no way to predict that. Of course, there's a certain amount of things that we can do to say, okay, this is generally the type of life that I might like to live one day, so I'm going to do certain things to prepare me to be able to do that. But such a huge part of it just falls down to chance. If you're in the right place at the right time, if you happen to have the right opportunities fall into your lap,
the right people.
If you happen to meet the right people,
Right.
yeah. And if you happen to stay on a path where you even continue to want that going forward, because you may even in a year or two from now want something completely different for the future.
Yeah.
So there's almost no point in hyperfixating on it to the extent to where all you're doing is looking at like, God, where am I going to be in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 30 years from now? Because there's only so much you can do about that.
If you work on the now, those 30 years will end up better than you just constantly thinking about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then you wish that you appreciated them while they were there too. You wish you appreciated the moments while you were in them.
Absolutely, yeah. The only thing that we can really have control over is being here now and really taking advantage of the relationships and the experiences that we have today and the decisions that we're currently making. What is the next right thing for right now's version of me? Not the past version of me, not the future, but what is the next right thing for right now? And then letting go of all that, like you said, you're able to really be able to enjoy and live life to its fullest. And you're making these memories and having these experiences that one day are going to turn out to be priceless, that you easily could have completely missed out on if all you were doing was focusing on, oh God, I wish, 5 years ago I would have made better decisions, or, oh, where am I going to be in 10 years from now? How am I going to get to this point to get this big promotion?
And the what ifs never end too, because there's so many decisions you could think, like, what if I did this differently? What if I did that differently? What path? That just never end. You can't enjoy the moment at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Something that got brought up actually the other night in a improv based show that I was in. One of the suggestions that I had asked for the get was, what is a piece of advice that you were given? And the piece of advice was that the only certains in life are money and death. Everything else is uncertain. So there's not, to an extent, I understand worrying about it, but there's no reason to spend your entire life only fixating on the what ifs, or on where you want to be necessarily.
They don't matter anymore.
Yeah. The only thing you can really do is realize that no matter what, we're all going to end up in the same place. We're all living just to eventually die. And the only thing that we really can hold on to and have control over is what we're doing in this moment, and the people that we're choosing to have around us, and the relationships we're choosing to have, and the aspects of life that we're choosing ourselves to be important to us. Which is another thing that I believe we talked about in this conversation, is that in the history of the universe, human existence is such a tiny little blip of everything, to where like the daily things that feel like the end of the world to us are so insignificant in the overall picture of all of existence.
Yeah.
To where it's like, yeah, this may feel like it's the end of the world to me, but I still know that no matter what happens, it doesn't really actually matter to the larger picture, which can be kind of freeing, because then you look at it, and if you try to be optimistic about it, it's like, okay, well, that means I get to choose what's important to me then. The values that are important to me, the people that are important to me. And all of a sudden you're not focused on, oh my gosh, this is the end of the world. It's like, well, overall, it's not going to make that much of a difference. This is the cards that I were dealt. These are the cards that I were dealt. And this is what I'm going to choose to do with them, to really try and make the best life for myself and become the best version of myself that I can be, given the circumstances that I'm currently in right now.
And kind of using with mistakes, you kind of have to use them as a way to become better and everything. Because if you regret, if I had done this differently, if I didn't do this, but if you didn't do that, would you know what you know now? Would you know to be better? Would you have known that was wrong if you didn't do that wrong?
Absolutely, yeah. Even the things that we regret, even our biggest mistakes, ways that we fucked up, things that we didn't do that we would maybe in this moment choose to do differently. All that is a huge part of what shaped you into becoming the human being that you are today. To where, yeah, even if it's not the most positive thing, it was still necessary to get to where we're at now. Without it, the version of you that exists now, that's thinking these things and saying these things, wouldn't exist.
And you don't have to identify with it either. You don't have to think, I'm not proud of how I acted back then, or how I acted during this time.
Absolutely,
But you don't have to, okay, but that was you then. That was the best you could do at that time. You had your reasons for being that way. All you can do now is think, okay, in the future, I'm going to be better than that, and focus on what you can control.
Yeah. And I mean, even if it's something that you're not proud of, I think to an extent, there's something beautiful about being able to, take a step back and later on in somebody's life, really look at the trajectory of, this is where I come from. These are the cards that I was dealt when I was born, and the environment that I was raised in, and everything that I went through in my early adult years. And then later adult years, and really being able to see and follow somebody's experiences and how all of that really changed them and shaped them to be a better version of themselves, um, and become a better person overall. Whether it's just in personal lives, whether if we're talking about something more deep, a quote that I really like, I am personally responsible for becoming more ethical than the world that I was raised in.
Hmm.
Um, and I think that while there are things that you may not even be proud of, it's still you get to see how these things shaped you into the version of yourself that exists now, which is the version of yourself that is the most important realistically. Because nobody's dealing with the version of yourself from 10 years ago. Nobody's interacting with that person, having interpersonal relationships with that person today. That person's gone. They're having relationships and interactions with the you that's standing in front of them right now. And the version of you that currently exists that was shaped by all these experiences, both good and bad.
But then the problem is, I guess, if people know you at a certain time of your life, then they'll just remember you. Even if you change and everything, they'll still see you as that person you were. Like, a lot of people don't want to give another person a second chance. They just want to think, okay, they're this way, they're not going to change, and even if they improve and everything, they still see them as.
I feel like that's why I'm so keen on people do change and people don't.
Yeah.
I hate that quote that people are always like, "Oh, no, but people don't change. They're gonna make a mistake." People learn from mistakes. People
Yeah.
really do, and it causes
Absolutely.
change. I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I also, on the flip side of that, while completely agreeing with what you just said, would argue that part of this, living in the moment and being here now, something that comes with that is that other people's opinion of you are none of your business.
Exactly. It
The
doesn't matter. You
Yeah.
shouldn't think about what they think of you, because that is when you sit there thinking about how,
Yeah.
oh, what could I have done differently? No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Be yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. We
Yeah.
all have our own version of this reality that exists in our head. The version of this world that exists to me in my head is completely different than the one that exists to you or to some of the people down at the pit or the people from my conservatory.
Yeah.
And the one that I'm currently in is the version of the world and everything that exists to me right now, from my perspective. And that's all I can really have control over. So might as well just let the rest of it go. And at the end of the day, the people who are good, who you want to have in your life, who you want to have these good relationships with, are going to be able to see that too. Well, the people who are good, who you want to have in your life, who also want that for you. Another part of that too is you're not necessarily entitled to have everybody in your life in this way, even if you want them to be. We all get to kind of make our own decisions for the people we want to surround ourselves with and the people that we want to have relationships with in our lives. And while it's unfortunate that sometimes that doesn't always line up with what the other person wants, that's just kind of part of being in the moment of, yeah, I would have liked this, but this is the current reality that I'm working with. And that's okay.
Like, maybe somebody just comes in your life sometimes because you need to learn a lesson from them, but they're not necessarily meant to stay in your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everybody, I feel like to an extent, you can look at everybody in your life and see they add value in their own way. Whether it's by teaching you lessons about what you don't want to have in your life, the kinds of people you don't want to have in your life, the kinds of people that you do, the ways that you would like to treat people, the ways that you would like to be treated by people, just understanding other people's realities and experiences and outlook on the world. Every single person has their own unique impact on your life. And it's okay if it's not exactly the one that you would have liked that person to have. Um, yeah, kind of trailed off in thought there, but
Oh no, it's
No
fine.
worries.
Yeah. Our friend John just walked in, so I just got to say, yeah. But
No worries.
um, but yeah, everybody has their own. I don't necessarily want to say purpose because who am I to say or know whether or not there's some kind of, higher power or meaning behind any of this? Because all I know is, again, we are just this tiny little microscopic blip in the existence of everything. And the only
Yeah.
thing that I can control is these are the cards that I was dealt. This is the situation I'm in right now. And so this is what I'm going to do with that to
But
create the
yeah,
life for myself.
yeah, but it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people want to feel like they find, like, especially with religion, they want to make it feel like they're more significant. There's a comfort in being more significant. Okay, we're going to this place after we die, or oh, I'm
Yeah.
significant. But in a way, like, people view it some people view it depressing, like we're just this small glimpse of existence and time and everything. But in a way, there's a comfort to that because then it kind of helps you detach more, and it's just like, okay, I'm part of something bigger. We're all kind of part of
Yeah.
this all, like, of everything, and there's a comfort in that. And I think that's
Absolutely.
what a lot of, like, the Eastern spirituality talks about a lot, is like the like how, like, the beauty of impermanence and not being, non-attachment and everything like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of it comes down to, too, the way that you choose to look at it and the lens that you choose to look at that through. Um, you could think of it as being kind of depressing, oh, like what happens after we die, thinking that, well, we don't know that there is anything. Or you could look at it as, well, we don't know yet. We're not going to know until we do die. So, either way, we're going to live through our life and eventually we're going to find out, or we're not going to find out. And if we don't find out, there's nothing really depressing or sad about that at that point, because then it's all over.
Yeah.
Also, to an extent, it almost can feel a little arrogant to think that with everything that exists, we're so significant and so important to everything. you know Everything has its role to play in the existence of everything, I feel like, and just being able to be comfortable and sitting in that is a lot better than trying to make it out to be that we're so much more than we are,
Yeah.
because that's just going to lead to disappointment. you know like, once you have a moment where you realize, like, oh wait, I am very small in comparison to everything like that. It comes down to, now you're going to be looking at it through this, like, oh, well, I thought I was so important, so this, so that. Or you can look at it as like, wow, there's so much around me that's so beautiful and amazing. And I get to just kind of sit back and take it all in. And
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to experience it.
And that actually can make you happier when you get off of yourself. Like, a lot of unhappiness comes from being stuck in your head, just thinking about, oh, the me, like who I am, where am I going, like what have I done, like who am I going to be, and like your sense of yourself, rather than just being in the moment and maybe being interested in other people and their story, or being interested in what's going on, or
Absolutely.
just the world in general, or nature even, or anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, there's so much out there that we get to experience. Even though we are just this tiny blip, we still get to be this tiny little blip and be a part of something huge. And I think there's something that you can really learn to grow to appreciate about that. And being able to take that step back and look at everything and just sit in it.
Yeah. And this is sort of a double question, but how did your beliefs develop? And also, how did you get into acting and performing, and how did that become a big part of your life? Because I feel like those seem to tie together with you. So,
That is a complicated question. Wow. Okay. As far as my beliefs, I've always had a very complicated relationship when it comes to things like religion and spirituality. Growing up, I was raised in a family where both of my parents were raised very strict Roman Catholic. My mom, as an adult, converted and became Baptist. Um, and while I was born later on, after my parents stopped sending my siblings to Christian schools and stuff like that, it was still very much that I was raised in a household being taught a lot of these more conservative religious beliefs as just fact, um, which big aspect to who I am as a person. I am queer, non-binary, androsexual, if you want to like get technical with labels and stuff. Basically, just I'm non-binary and I'm attracted to people who are on the more masculine or more male-aligned side of the gender spectrum. That doesn't necessarily line up too well with Roman Catholic parents raising me when I'm like 6 years old, teaching me that God created AIDS to wipe out the prostitutes and the gays because they were sexual deviants. So I just kind of always had a really complicated relationship with religion because of that. I would say my qualms with religion are way less with spirituality and having a belief system to where there's like a higher power and stuff like that, and way more aligned with organized religion, is what I tend to steer away from. Especially since if you look at it too, a lot of these, from my perspective, these stories that you read in like the Bible and other religious texts, they were written by man, by human beings. And you can look at things throughout history and see where things were changed by the churches just to meet their current political needs at that point in time. So there's only so much of that you can really look at and say like, yeah, this is absolutely accurate. Because who's to say that that's not just something that somebody tweaked or changed because that suited them?
Why couldn't have it been just Moses bullshitting everybody, telling everybody about the 10 Commandments, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, why not? He
Yeah.
could have just been a total asshole and lying to everybody.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no way to know that. There's no way to know how much of that is, truthful and honest, especially when you look at things like...
We all know he didn't part the sea, so what are these commandments, you know?
Like the whole thing with humans, we have free will to go on and do and say whatever we want. Who's to stop somebody from lying or making things up or twisting the truth? And there's no way that we can know whether or not somebody did. So it's almost like you have to take things like that with a grain of salt of like, yeah, this is what some people believe. And while that can be a beautiful thing, don't get me wrong.
God told me to do this.
Yeah.
Really, guy? You know, like, oh, sure. I don't know. What does he want from us at this point? What is he getting out of that?
Yeah, like
whoever they're off or whatever they're trying.
Who's to say that God isn't up there, partying it up with, the trans women and the drug addicts and doing all these things, tatted up? Who's to say? Who's to say God isn't a woman, or who's to say it's not the Greek gods
God
up there?
is yourself. I like to believe.
Well, actually, and Jesus was like always hung around like the prostitutes and the like. He didn't really. He was kind of he hung around with the people who were kind of outcasted and everything.
Absolutely, yeah. And so a huge part of it, like my qualms with religion, kind of came from, really growing up and seeing stuff like that and thinking stuff like that, because it's like, well, if this, God is supposed to be good and, Jesus is supposed to be all about forgiveness and this and that, and we're to turn around and create people like me, why would that be an issue then? Why would we then be damned to
God? Why did your two creations make me the way I am? Like, why is it a problem now?
Yeah, exactly. Another huge part of it too came from, I grew up, my family was heavily into, nature, getting out. We would constantly, during the summers, I'm from Southern California. During the summers, we would constantly be going up to Kings Canyon Sequoia National Park to be camping.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Or out to the beach. Fun. It was so beautiful and amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's probably it's a big life experience.
Yeah, and like I grew up, when I was really young, we were in the valley, but for a huge chunk of my life, we were living in the Antelope Valley. The valley being the San Fernando Valley, the whole Valley Girl kind of area. But for a majority of my life, we were in the high desert. So it's like you could go out and drive through these desert roads and just be desert for miles and miles. Tumbleweed was a legitimate issue. There were the Joshua trees and the yuccas everywhere. Really getting the opportunity to, even though I grew up in Southern California, a lot of people think that that's like big city, stuff like that. I was really fortunate to get the opportunity to grow up really being able to be surrounded by nature and really learning to appreciate how beautiful the world around us can be. Going to like road tripping to the different national parks and seeing wildlife and learning about plants and, you know, ecosystems and the symbiotic relationships that exist out in the wilderness and in the wild.
That's awesome.
And that was always something that I found to be really beautiful. And I, for a while, was very much the type of person where I'm like, well, I kind of believe that everything has, you know, a spirit and a, you know, part to play in all of it.
I
Whether
still
it's,
think that way at times. I think everything
yeah,
has life.
absolutely, me as well. Whether it's, you know, the rocks, these huge boulders on these cliff sides, the water running through these rivers, the animals, the plants, everything is all connected and can exist without each other.
Everything happens for a reason, and everything is here for a reason.
Yeah. And I think that really helped shift my thought process into this. Well, we are such a tiny little blip in the existence of everything. You know, looking at all this and looking at, you know, fossil records and just things that we can physically hold in our hands and prove about the history of this planet and how it started and how far we've come. I think that really helped me understand that and be able to be comfortable with it and comfortable with sitting in that and feeling like, okay, yeah, I am individually very insignificant to all of this. But at the same time, I have the opportunity to really be able to take all of this in and enjoy it and experience it, which there are so many others out there who never get that chance. Whether it's because of a miscarriage or somebody, you know, dies at a young age or somebody is not dealt the cards where they're in life where they're able to make it out of their little hometown or city and be able to see the world and see everything that's in it. And mind you, I'm not even like the most traveled person. I've never been outside of the United States. But even within this country, there are so many people that don't even get a chance to leave their town or their state or anything ever in their lifetimes to really be able to see what else is out there and get a sense for the bigger picture of everything.
Yeah, and even different parts of the U.S. like very different from each other. It's like going to
some people don't even know that Puerto Rico is technically part of the United States district. You know,
yeah,
you don't need a passport to go to Puerto Rico.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, you know, you look at some other countries, like if you look at the UK, you drive for 3-4 hours and you've been through multiple countries.
Yeah.
And seen all this. Here in the United States, you drive for 8 hours sometimes and you're still in the same state.
Yeah.
Like you still didn't even cross the state border.
And the thing is, everywhere you go in the dang country, it's completely different than the next, like miles different.
Absolutely, yeah.
I swear, I've been, when I used to live in Florida, I would walk into a store, just grabbing cigarettes or food, anything. People would be like, "You're from Jersey, aren't you?" And I'm like, "What? How'd you know? All I said was hi."
Yeah.
What the hell? It's
yeah. And that even on like a scale of, you know, just being within this country can really show you how different everything is everywhere and how different other people's realities and experiences are.
Yeah.
Which again kind of reaffirms like the version of this world that exists to me is nothing like the version of this world that exists to anybody else. The only version of it that I have any control or ownership over is my version of it that I'm perceiving. So might as well just value that and focus on that rather than trying to, you know, split my attention into looking to, you know, what other people are thinking of me or how other people have
comparing yourself in your path, because your path is always going to be very different than anyone else's.
Yeah. And that's totally okay. And I feel like that's something that can be hard to really sit in and be comfortable with too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as far as me getting into performing and acting, actually was kind of coincidental that I also ended up getting into all this stuff. It was a bit of a separate thing from, my beliefs around, life and stuff. They just kind of happened to line up. And these things that my acting teachers were telling me were just happened to really resonate. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like that can be applied to life too. My background as an actor, I actually have an interesting background education wise. I started college when I was 13,
Wow.
at the same time that I started high school. I was a biological sciences major, and I was going to graduate from my early college high school program,
Fuck, your
ideally with.
parents were strict on you. Very. I can tell now.
Yeah.
I had a friend who did something very similar, and he moved out real quick once he found out
Yeah.
how strict they were. Once he realized, oh shit,
Yeah.
why am I doing college at the age of 15? This is weird. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It comes off weird and rude, but
Oh no, I totally get it. With my parents,
that's a
it's
lot.
growing up.
That's a
Both of my
lot on
parents
you,
worked in
man.
medical labs my entire life. I grew up. I have an uncle who was a professor of anatomy and physiology and the head of his department at the college he taught at. My older sister worked in the same medical lab with my mom for a while.
You have a very scientific family.
Like I have a cousin who works for Amgen, overseeing and managing all of their clinical trials. And
Wow.
my mom's huge thing with what she really wanted to do was to go off into marine biology. And she didn't do that herself. And
She wanted you
I
to
don't know
do it.
how much of this was conscious on her part or how much of it was subconscious, is that kind of ended up being pushed onto her kids.
Say it bled all right onto you.
Yeah. At first, my sister was going to school trying to become a marine biologist. She ended up leaving school for personal reasons that are her own to say or not say, so I'm not going to get into them here.
Do not. No worries.
She wanted my brother to go into something like that, I'm pretty sure, but he just didn't have the interest for it. And had applied for the school. I went into high school at the same time as I started taking classes at the local college. Ideally, I was going to graduate high school with an associate's and then go off to get a bachelor's and then eventually go on to study oceanography at the Scripps Institute of Oceanography, and either going to field research and conservation or working with cetaceans and pinnipeds in captivity were kind of like my options in my head. Until I was in this program and I just was not doing well mental health wise. I was really depressed. This is around the time in my life where I started actually getting really suicidal for a while and I hope I'm not getting like too. No, fuck it. It's called Talk About the Deets stuff. So
shit happens, man. Yeah. Shit happens. What we're here for.
I've even talked about like my own stuff with depression and all that too. I've been so.
Like this is around the time where it's like I had started self-harming, and like for the first time I had like literally carved the word fag into one of my thighs.
So wait, was it because you still kind of believed the religious? So you were still kind of believe what you were raised, and you thought there must be something wrong with you? Is that the way you looked at it?
I was at a point to where I was just starting to come to terms with the fact that I wasn't straight. The whole compulsive heterosexuality thing, in my mind, it was just a given, like, well, yeah, you like girls, obviously. You're a boy. So you're supposed to like girls, that's just a given. But I was like, oh, fuck, I also like boys. And I had just come out of the closet as bisexual at school for the first time ever. And I was really struggling with that, with other things. Just in general, I'm neurodivergent as fuck. Growing up,
me too, technically, or at least that's what they told me when I was like 13. Like I was diagnosed as like Asperger's syndrome or on the spectrum.
And it's like none of the adults or my peers in my life, for majority of the first part of my life, where I was in like my formative years, really knew what to do with me or how to deal with me. And so the only way that a lot of the adults in my life were able to kind of try to deal with that and cope with that is by telling me that if I was anything like the way that I am, I would never find anybody who would ever want to love me or be my friend or want to put up with me or be around me. So I needed to learn how to change and be more like other people in order to be able to have these relationships going forward.
And they viewed it
And
as a
now,
choice, I'm guessing. Like, they didn't think it was natural that you were just that way.
I mean, this is even beyond like before the whole sexuality thing came up. This is just how like my brain works and I am as a person.
Absolutely.
And I
It's
do genuinely think it came from a good place. Like, I don't think, my mom sitting me down and telling me that, like, oh, you'll never be able to get a girlfriend if you, keep going on like this.
it
Like,
really
you're never
no.
going to be
I
able to
agree
wife.
with you completely. It's not
Yeah,
them coming at
that's
you
just,
and telling them they hate you for the way you are. It's them being like, oh shit,
yeah,
we're not used to this.
yeah, it
How
was,
do we approach this situation? And
yeah.
so
These
they don't.
adults are
It's new to them. It's new to you,
yeah,
especially since yeah.
they
I don't know.
wanted what was best for me, and they just didn't know how to really achieve that and how to kind of guide me in that right direction. And they were just doing the best that they could with what they knew and where they were at with their experiences in life to try to do that.
Yeah.
And I can't fault them for that. But at the same
No,
time,
absolutely not.
unfortunately, to this little kid, to
It's
this young teenager, somebody who's still in their formative years, isn't emotionally mature enough to really be able to understand that.
yeah.
Your perspective on that's so different.
It absolutely at a young age like that, it'll do a lot of damage. Which honestly, in a way, you personally, I think you grew and ran with it in a good way.
Yeah.
You see what they did, and you see, and not saying you have flaws with that, but every man has flaws, every person, woman, whoever. But you took it in a good way, and you even forgive
Yeah.
them the way you're speaking
And
for
I mean,
how
it's
they treated
something I'm
you.
still working through, even.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's something to where, all that just over the years, when I was a kid, really growing and becoming the person that I was going to become, then adding the whole struggling over sexuality and stuff like that, and really getting to the age to where it's like, all these other boys my age at the time, I didn't come out as non-binary until like way later on. At the time, I had just come out as a bisexual male, and I was like, well, all these other boys are getting girlfriends and stuff, and I'm only really sexually feeling something towards other boys. Um, and then that led to, with the compulsive heterosexuality, that concept, if you're not familiar with it, is that society raises people and teaches them, this is your gender, so you are attracted to this other opposite gender. And that's just a given. So that's never a
Yeah,
question in
it's
your mind as
society
to whether or
leading
not,
you into a direction is what they're saying.
yeah, like it's never a question in your mind whether or not you're attracted to the opposite sex. And
I
rather
always
than,
say, and I mean no disrespect, I weirdly agree and disagree with that. I don't know how to say it, but I don't know. I feel like
yeah,
it never made sense to me in a way
yeah,
like that. And I'm not. It's I have my sister's bi, and I have no hate against anybody gay, but I don't understand the whole gender and sex thing now because that's the way I was raised. It's
yeah,
you look down
yeah,
and
definitely.
you have
I mean, it's a very confusing, weird thing to. It's something that even I struggle to understand a lot of the times as somebody who's very like out and proud as it's very queer person.
mhm.
It's a very muddy and messy and confusing thing, especially when you look at it. Only so much of it is actually based in biology and is only actually backed up by biology. So much of it is just human beings wanted to create a social structure based on what they physically saw in another person's body, which then turned into this really weird, confusing, messy situation over, however many hundreds of years or thousands of years that was a thing. Um, so at the time, it was just kind of segueing back into, my journey of going into transitioning from like STEM into more of the arts. I was just doing very bad mental health wise, I was forcing myself into situations where it's like I was dating girls who I was friends with because I was like, oh, well, I feel this, really
You're,
strong connection with this person. So this must mean that I have romantic feelings for them.
you were
Realistically,
trying to do what your parents wanted, but
No.
yeah.
you weren't comfortable in those shoes,
Yeah. Realistically, it was me subconsciously mistaking a really close friendship for romantic feelings and then ending up damaging friendships and making things weird. And it was a very stressful time that I just wasn't coping well with. Around the same time,
Yeah.
I had one day just forgotten to bring the codes for my college classes. And I had to register in college classes to stay in the program. So I just had to take my friend's codes. One of my friend was doing her visual performing arts credit as an intro to acting class, and I just took that.
Oh shit!
And then another one of my friends was
You got in
taking a beginning
trouble.
credit. So I took that code. So I had like those. I was
Oh.
like, okay, fuck it. I'll just do my VPA credit right now.
The
I'll do that
person
for
who
PE.
checked saw that and was like, what's going on here?
Yeah. And then that just kind of sparked something in me to where next thing I knew, the next semester, I joined the school's visual performing arts club and was like, you know what? No, I'm going to major in liberal arts and humanities. And then eventually telling my parents, like, I don't want to go to school for biology. I want to go to school for theater. And I want to go to, either AMDA or ADA, which, if you're unfamiliar, it's the American Musical and Dramatic Academy or the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, which was not received well. My mom sat me down. I told her this and was like so upset to where I thought she was going to start crying. And she was like, I just feel like you've completely given up on your education. Which, to be fair, me as just like an asshole teenager was just like, well, yeah. Duh.
Honestly, I did something similar. Yeah. So I wouldn't give you shit for it because, it's not you giving up on your education. It's you saying, why do I care about this thing you have...
Yeah, it's not even your
pushed
choice.
me through.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like, I still love biology. I'm still a huge nerd. I can rant for hours about...
I bet. You
exotic
probably
animals.
love the ocean and all of its crazy ass animals. I
like,
bet you do.
Plants and stuff. But actually looking at like trying to pursue that as like a full time, like, this is what I want to do with my life, I just wasn't happy.
Yeah, it's not what you want to do.
Yeah, the next thing I knew, I was performing, and it made me happy, and it was a way to escape what was happening right now and just live in a moment that was different from the reality that I was currently facing, to where I felt like I could safely live in that moment. And then I started doing shows at the local community theater and started working for the local community theater. And then I did a couple of shows that I was paid to do, where I originated. It was an original play, 2 original plays that I was paid to be in, and like originate roles and really delving into that, taking voice lessons. I like the next semester ended up like halfway through my sophomore year, ended up leaving the early college high school program and transferring back to a comprehensive, where I ended up joining a choir program where my high school had like a world renowned choir program that would do stuff on like a professional level. And I ended up joining that and really running with it. And then next thing I knew, I was moving to New York at 18 to study musical theater at the American Musical and Dramatic Academy on the Upper West Side. And I just kind of never went back from there.
Fuck it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You found where you wanted to be, but it's just a thing of making it work.
Yeah. And it's also so much of just what I happened to learn and be taught, like through these classes, really resonated with me, like with the whole be here now, be kind, live truthfully. I was looking at all that, and especially not necessarily as it was being taught to me, but later on, a couple of years down the road, I was thinking about these things just kind of while I was ruminating on choices that I had made and, regrets that I had, auditions that I didn't prepare for enough or that I just didn't show up for, decisions that I would have made differently. And I started thinking back at all these things, and I'm like, well, all of that is very true. And if acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances, why wouldn't I apply these things to living truthfully under the reality of what my circumstances actually are?
And that's what makes the characters.
I love that.
Yeah.
Continue.
And that's what makes the characters interesting. And like the characters, good characters aren't interesting because they've done everything right and they're perfect. The characters are interesting and they develop as characters because of their flaws and because of things that didn't go their way and because of, so you could just look at that as your character development.
We always come back to the yin and yang, man. Why do we always come back to the yin and yang? There's no good without bad. There's no. You can't be excited about something without being disappointed about that.
And like what you said before, like everybody coming into your life for a reason. Maybe a shitty person comes into your life for a reason, or someone who doesn't treat you right. So you can appreciate someone who does treat you right.
Absolutely, yeah. Even if there's no higher power behind that, at the end of the day, that's still a lesson that you get to learn and something that you get to take on with you and be like, okay, that's what happened then, but this is where I'm at now. And this is what I know now. So my reality that I'm facing now, I can take those lessons and use that to create a better today. And like you said, the good characters, they're good because they're honest and they're real and they're human. And we can relate to them and see, like, I understand you on a very real human level. Humans aren't perfect. They haven't done
that's
everything.
Why you can't really relate. I never really was a big Superman fan for that reason because I thought like he was just kind of super and perfect. I couldn't relate to him, but like Batman and Daredevil, like they were more complex. Like I could relate to them. Like
I think that's the point, though. I think that's what comic books do. They give you that character that's the almighty and great one, and they try to give you to someone to look up to.
Yeah, but
that's why all the other characters are popular now because everyone is the human.
Yeah,
Batman's human, Robin's human, Flash fucked up a science project and now he has super speed. Everyone else is human besides Superman. He's the alien.
Yeah,
he came from another planet and he's like, oh shoot, I can shoot lasers out of my eyes and I have super strength that I can fly. Where everyone else is using a fucking motorcycle, a car, But it's not a problem, too. It's hope.
Other aspects of art, I would say, too. Like, beyond the acting stuff, like getting into comedy and really delving into, improv and sketch and stuff like that over the past couple of years. Like, the really good scenes and the really good moments on stage are ones that feel human and real and that an audience can look to and be like, I feel moved by this because I can relate. And I can understand this. This feels real.
And that's a lot like that. That's a lot with like improv. I think when people start improv, they start with, the over the top, the wacky, or you start off like thinking a lot like I'm gonna do this and it'll be funny. Like when I'm like, but I think as you get into it more, it's just like you get in the moment with the scene with the people, and then it becomes more funny that way, just being in the moment and just kind of reacting to the person who's there.
Yeah, taking what you get right now and honestly responding to that, which is another way that as an artist, I've really felt like that has helped me in my daily life. Like everything that like the People's Improv Theater says, improv your life. It's what we're all doing. We're all having to just take what's been given to us and what's in front of us right now and honestly and truthfully respond to that. And as long as you've felt comfortable in knowing, okay, this is who I am right now in this point in time, and you're able to be comfortable and confident in that, you'll know what the right thing to do or to say is, or where to go from that is. Because it's not even going to be a thought. It'll just be like, okay, yeah, this is where I'm going with this. This is how I'm going to respond to the situation or what this person sitting in front of me is saying to me.
That's cool.
So, any final thoughts or things you'd like to bring up before we wrap up?
I would like one. I'm gonna bring it back to Superman. I kind of was thinking about it while we were having this conversation, and the point of Superman, right? no one relates to Superman.
No.
In the comic books, the symbol means hope. The S. It's people want to strive to become super. So that's why more people relate to Batman, because Batman has all the problems and is human. Yeah, he's wealthy and a Playboy millionaire or whatever. And what, you know, it's just comic book storyline at its finest, apparently. But you want to strive to be like Superman, even though everyone's Batman.
So it's like the ideal you try to be.
You want to be super, but nobody is.
Yeah.
Not one person. We're all imperfect.
Definitely. And I feel like real happiness comes from being able to be comfortable with that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Say, that's when you are truly happy. That's when you can wake up and be like,
like what
I'm a fucking asshole. You know, and not that's being a little extreme, but you know, just admitting who you are and being yourself.
Yeah, we're all flawed. And would I love to wake up one day and be super and be this perfect human being who has it all figured out and is living this amazing life?
When I become that alien from Krypton, there you go. I will be fucking.
At the same time, I don't want to be living a lie.
Exactly.
And the only way to not do that is to really be able to say, okay, but I'm not Superman. You know, maybe I am Batman.
That's why more people relate with Batman, because Batman's like, Batman, my parents died.
Well, that's why I really liked Robert Pattinson's Batman, because I feel like he showed that real vulnerable side of Batman. The others
True. I mean, this ain't a Batman topic podcast, but I thought it was a good comparison for the storyline.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Yeah, absolutely.
So,
but hell yeah, Spike.
So it's been good talking to you. Anything you'd like to say? I guess before we wrap up, just final thoughts.
Well, just thank you for having me on. It was fun. And I really enjoyed having this chat. Be in the moment. Be here now. Don't focus on things that you have zero control over, because all it's going to do is leave you miserable.
Hell yeah. You going to improv next Friday?
Oh, I'm at improv daily.
I think we're going next Friday, so we'll probably see you there.
All right. I will see you there.
Yeah, Spike.
Yeah, great talking to you, man.
All right.
Love hearing from you.
Yes. Have a good one.
You as well.
Let's talk about deep stuff. Oh shit! I'ma bring my own rock.